Good afternoon. Welcome to this session dedicated to Ethiopia sourcing. So we will introduce ourselves, Theodros and myself, Xavier, just after a brief presentation, 2.5 minutes of our end-to-end logistics value-added proposal. So please, let's watch this short video presenting our logistics activities.
When the world's markets are becoming increasingly complex, your international competitiveness is based on a high-performance supply chain. Bolloré Logistics is your partner of reference to optimize the way your materials and products are managed. Global supply chain. Whatever your objectives or specific needs, our engineers design and implement innovative and tailor-made solutions. Bolloré Logistics guarantees results and operational excellence from the word go. Imagine a control tower with an eye on the 4 corners of the world, where a team of dedicated specialists coordinates your end-to-end shipments from planning through to delivery. Rely on a network of experts right by your side. As a lead logistics provider, Bolloré Logistics selects and coordinates best-of-breed internal or accredited partners to suit your supply chain. We consolidate orders from multiple suppliers through strategically located platforms that deliver logistics services with high added value. By constantly tracking your shipments, Bolloré Logistics is alerted to potential obstacles and able to propose alternative solutions at any stage. To our perfect knowledge of the field, local customs regulations, and QHSE standards, we ensure a worldwide control of the supply chain. Get access to cutting-edge information technologies. With Prism, Bolloré Logistics has a powerful management tool, integrating flow and performance monitoring, centralizing all the information from supplier to final customer. Prism is a dynamic planning tool and provides end-to-end visibility of your logistics chain. By entrusting the global management of your global supply chain to Bolloré Logistics, you make sure your goods are delivered on time, your costs are optimized, and your productivity is improved, leaving you to concentrate on your business and fully prepared for the future. Bolloré Logistics.
So thank you for having watched this video. Bolloré Logistics has actually a great differentiator versus its competitors. It is the Africa focus. So let's introduce ourselves now. So Theodros.
Good afternoon. My name is Tedros Abraham. I'm the MD of CLS Logistics. We've been the exclusive partners to Bolloré for the past 12 years in Ethiopia. We mainly focus on logistics solutions to all industries. But now, of course, the past few years, we focus mainly on the garment and textile industry. Just to say a few things about Ethiopia and the regional Horn of Africa. As you know, there's been a huge geopolitical changes that are happening in the region. Ethiopia making peace with Eritrea, Somalia coming up, Djibouti coming up. So as a whole, the whole Horn of Africa is changing for the better. Ethiopia has had a 10% growth on average for the past 10 years. So that has attracted a lot of investments into the country. Today, we are one of the largest FDI recipients of investments in Africa, with the highest economic growth in Africa today. So because of that, we have shifted into and refocused into on how we can find solutions to the textile and garment industry. And one of the reasons why we're here today is to make sure that at least we understand and hear from you as brand buyers from Ethiopia and potential buyers, suppliers, manufacturers that could be here in the room, and be able to understand and unlock the different questions that you may have regarding logistics and how we can provide you a door-to-door supply of services. One of the, just like what Xavier said, one of the things that makes us special on the ground is we partner with a global partner as Bolloré, so we'll be able to provide incoming and export of products into Ethiopia on a door-to-door basis. This is what differentiates us from the others. And we've been doing this for all our other customers, other sectors for the past 12 years. But now as the garment and textile industry grows the past 2 years, we've been also part of that growth, and we'll be able to share with you some of the things that we do on who our customers are and what kind of custom-made services that we provide to our customers. Thank you again, and it is a privilege that we have you here to listen to us, and please feel free to ask us all the questions that you need. That's why we're here. So thank you.
Thank you, Theodros. So let's introduce myself now. So prior to joining Bolloré, I had worked for many years for a large branded apparel company. At this time, it was called Sara Lee company. Now it is Hanes, so specialized in underwear and legwear for both men and women. So while I was working in this company in the early 2000s, I was on board for the launch of the move to outsourcing to Far East for apparel business. So the setup of a streamlined supply chain for this Far East sourcing actually took a while in terms of years. So I do think that we are currently in the same situation in Ethiopia, even though a lot has already been done. However, jointly with Theodros and our international freight forwarder teams, we think that there is still room to improve. So for 5 years now, I have been working for Africa region within Bolloré. So I am in charge of the vertical industry, FMCG and retail. So FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods, includes garment makers, and retail includes fashion chain. So let's have the objective, as mentioned already, perhaps mentioned by Theodros, our objective is to make evidence that it is worth having discussion or workshop with you in order to address the time to market, streamlining and leveraging our knowledge of both. So Ethiopia corridor, currently Djibouti, but soon Eritrea corridor, and the freight forwarding for inbound raw materials and outbound of finished goods. So it can concern buyers from brands company, makers already with a presence in Ethiopia, and makers with potential plans to settle in Ethiopia. So this afternoon, please raise your hand. Are there some brands company representative? So brands, okay. Some makers already with a presence in Ethiopia? You're already, okay. And makers, perhaps makers with potential plans to settle in Africa? Okay, for you. So let's a brief word about Bolloré Company. It's a family group, still managed by Vincent Bolloré, who represents the 6th generation of the family, knowing that the 7th generation is already on board. The group is made of 3 pillars. So on the left, the first pillar, launched about 60 years ago, is transport and logistics, with a main differentiator to Africa and in Africa. The second pillar is the communication pole with Vivendi and Havas, and the third pole is specialized in, invested a lot in new cutting-edge batteries, electrical batteries technology. So regarding our presence in the movie, you saw that we had the end-to-end supply chain. So from anywhere in the world, all the red points represent affiliates of Bolloré. Though there are 107 of them, and currently we are number one. So in Africa, number one in France, in the top 5 in Europe, and in the top 10 worldwide. Perhaps, Theodros, regarding the focus on, you have the micro, right? The focus on Africa, perhaps a word on the Eastern Africa especially?
So if you look at the map, we've set it up in such a way that you'll be able to understand what we do, especially on the corridor of Ethiopia to Djibouti. Basically, if you look at Africa map on this side, as Xavier was saying, Bolloré has presence in 47 countries in Africa. Today it stands at number 1 solution provider in Africa. In Ethiopia, Djibouti corridor, it's been 12 years. In most part of Africa, it's over 50 years. Last year, Bolloré Kenya, for example, celebrated their 50th year. So there's a huge amount of expertise and knowledge, experience in the region and in Africa. If you look at the second point, which I've already mentioned, we've been there for over 50 years in most countries. Again, what makes us different and appealing to our customers are standards that we apply. We are ISO approved organizations in most part of Africa. We operate over 14 ports in concession as Bolloré, and hinterland transport manages various corridors, over 40 corridors all over Africa. Africa is about, just like anywhere else, it's about unlocking different corridors. If we can unlock different corridors, then we'll be able to supply better services. Example is, for example, if you look at Ethiopia and then southern part of Sudan, now, to be able to service that part of the world, you need to be able to unlock different corridors. Is it coming in through the Kenya-Mombasa port? Is it coming from Ethiopia? Is it coming through Eritrea? Now, with the peace with Eritrea, we're going to be using part of that. There's a lot of warehouses, over 280 warehouses, as you can see, lots of trucks that Bolloré manages in Africa. So it's quite effective. Next slide. You want to do this?
Yes. So if we focus now on the fashion, so we operate platforms and international hubs in all locations concerned by fashion, and then because we run the end-to-end solution at the end of the value chain, there is this. Can you launch the video, please?
Fashion, retail, and luxury require some dedicated services. We offer some tailor-made solution for flat garments or garments on hanger, through automatization of our supply chain at all stages, with also IT customized to the client's need. Dedicated fashion team organized the picking, labeling, pick and pack. We are certified TAPA Level A. Equipment and trained teams provided to guarantee the total security all along the process. The warehouse is equipped on a 24-hour alarm system and 200 square meter locked room for cargos values with fog generator inside to prevent all theft.
And to end with the Bolloré presentation, we do have strong corporate values and sustainable development commitments through our CSR policies, ethics and compliance, and QHSE policies. let's be pragmatic now. So the fashion in the fashion industry main challenges are to meet the fashion trends by controlling end-to-end lead time. And actually, our angle today will be to address the time to market and to present you some insights about the time to market reachable from Ethiopia. Obviously, there are other challenges around against the shrinkage and counterfeiting, the new generation consumers actor, the omnichannel distribution, and to be a responsible maker. But let's focus now on the time to market. So I suggest we go through this benchmark managed by Roland Berger strategy consulting company, showing the different time to market depending on the type of collections, which can be standard autumn, winter, spring, summer seasons, but as well resort collections, capsule collections, or even fast fashion collections. So in this different time to market benchmark, the best practice now is about, let's say, between 27 and 35 weeks between the startup of the development and the on-shelf availability of the garments, including in this time to market, this target about 10 to 12 weeks between the ex-works, so the finished goods available in the factory, and the availability on shelves. So 10 to 12 weeks. So these are this time to market we are going to benchmark from Ethiopia and compare them regarding mainly China and let's say Asia sourcing geography. So in the value chain, regarding Ethiopia, we think obviously about the finished goods outbound to Europe, US, or even Asia market. But you have to think about the inbounds of raw materials, knowing that the raw material supplier to come to Ethiopia, it's far longer than from Asia. So you have to take into account in the global time to market the inbound sourcing as well. So let's focus now on the Djibouti-Ethiopia corridor as it is today. And Theodros, some insights on this performance?
Sure. What we've measured here and what we'd like to convey to you basically is once cargo hits Djibouti and once all the documents that's needed for the import process and for export process, how much time does it actually need? Now, some of you that operate in Ethiopia understand that the documentation process could take long. And normally the consignee or the shipper needs to be very aware of what kind of documents are needed for customs and Ethiopian government and the ports. But assuming that all the documents that is required is all together and correct, the normal transit time, road transport, for example, if you look at import side, road transport Djibouti to Addis is plus or minus 3 days. And then you have a lot of documentation, custom process, all the necessary documents that need on both in Ethiopia and Djibouti to process that. We take about 10 days conservative working days. Obviously, that can be streamlined so that it can come down to about 7 days. At times, we do manage to get cargo from Djibouti to Ethiopia. Once a customer or the consignee presents us all the necessary documents, we can bring it under 10 days. But on average, on a conservative figure, we're looking at about plus or minus 10 working days. If you look at export side, it's quite similar. At times it's easier, I must say, because the government gives in a lot of privileges for exports because there's no export tax and the documentation with customs is much easier. Again, that can be streamlined. If you look at the next table down there, these are actual timelines from different sites, from Addis, from Mekelle, Kombolcha, Awassa, where Awassa is the big industrial park that's at the moment operational for the past 2 years. Kombolcha, there's a huge site as well, in Mekelle as well, and in Addis. So we've broken down so that you'll be able to understand how much time it needs for customs, for container pickup, for documentation, customs entry, inspection, actual transport, loading and offloading at port. Now, currently, there are some limitations to our services in Ethiopia. Some of the limitations that we have, especially on the export side, is consolidation. Consolidation in Ethiopia has not yet begun for export because the laws are changing, and hopefully 2019 we should be able to see that in place. Today you have what we call the milk run. Basically one container goes from one supplier to another collecting export material to be shipped. We're still working on a master bill of lading documents. House bill of lading is not yet introduced into the country. That has, again, its own limitations because master of bill of lading has to be issued once cargo is on board at Djibouti. That takes time, and it's difficult for the exporter to be able to provide to suppliers, to buyers rather, to send it on the other side. Still struggle with availability of containers at the moment in country. Again, we're expecting these challenges to be resolved mid-2019, end of 2019, as the new policy kicks in, where freight forwarders will be able to provide in-house bill of lading, container yards, bonded warehouses, consolidation, deconsolidation centers. All these laws that have already been introduced by the Ethiopian government, but the right framework is not yet in place, so we're hoping that mid-2019, end of 2019, we should be able to apply these changes, and that can change drastically for consignee or buyers or shippers. Yeah? Thank you.
Okay, these are information for the Djibouti-Ethiopia corridor. A word perhaps on the perspective with Eritrea?
So, earlier on I mentioned that Ethiopia has made peace after 20 years with Eritrea. Now, 20 years ago, the natural port to Ethiopia was Eritrea. So we're hoping that with Eritrea opening up an additional port come into play, the efficiency in Djibouti will increase and costs will go down because of competition. Today, it's only Djibouti. 98% of our import and export goes through Djibouti. So there's a huge monopoly that's been exercised by Djibouti. Definitely, when Eritrea come to play, the cost and efficiency and choices will be there. So we're expecting, again, towards mid-2019, end of 2019, we should have some changes happening.
Okay. So besides this focus on the intra-Africa, intra-Ethiopia lead time, let's go to the end-to-end finished good lead time. So some examples from the ex-factory availability of finished goods to the clients, branded companies, distribution center. It's still not on shelf. Right? These are the distribution center supply. So let's compare the lead time to serve Paris, a French branded company, and an American one, which would be located in New York City. So.
Sure. So if you look at on this map, if you look at from Shenzhen, we just took Shenzhen as an example. Coming to Europe, the actual transit time takes you 7 weeks, which makes Ethiopia competitive in terms of transit time from Asia to Europe market. So time to market. This is again ex factory. So that makes it competitive for Ethiopia, and we sit at a good location geographically speaking.
It includes the 10 days we
Exactly.
explain inside Ethiopia for using the corridor Djibouti, Ethiopia.
Exactly. And then if you look at the Western market, Europe, we took New York again. If we look at from China, Shenzhen to New York, you're looking at about 5.5 weeks of transit time. From Ethiopia, plus or minus 6 weeks. So looking at that map, we are indeed competitive as a country in terms of transit time. Yeah.
As I mentioned previously, we don't have to forget the supply chain from China, for as an example, fabric makers to Ethiopia garment maker for the raw material. So in this we illustrate with again Shenzhen fabric supplier to an Ethiopia industrial park. It would take about 33 days. So tomorrow now, yeah. Theodros, some words on the perspective within 1 or 2 years, please.
Sure. What we're looking at is there's different interventions that are happening up in Ethiopia. One is there is the train that comes in all the way from Djibouti to Addis or to Mojo, and of course now all the way to Addis. This could be a game changer if operated well and efficiently, in terms of time, transit time, and cost, and reliability, because of, as you understand, that it's a sensitive product that customers are exporting. So if, let's say, if we look at on export side, transporting by road from 950 kilometers, the port sits at 950 kilometers. If a truck breaks down on the way to Djibouti, it means it can easily miss a vessel. That has implications, obviously, at the buyer side to the supplier. If we use the rail, that can be eliminated, basically. And the cost, transport cost could be reduced greatly. Secondly, one of the anticipation that we have as logistics service provider is that we will be allowed to have bonded warehouses. This should kick in mid-2019. This is the promise that we have from the government. Now, what is that to you as a supplier and manufacturer? It creates that economies of scale that we can in consolidating cargo. Today, that's not available. So what that means is each manufacturer is exporting independently. But if we can consolidate cargo, then the costs and the economies of scale will be to the benefit of the exporter. Same agreement is for us to be an NVOCC. What that means for those who are not in the shipping business is allowing us to act like a shipping line, even though we are only freight forwarders, and be able to issue bill of ladings representing a shipping line. What that means is we do not wait for cargo to be on board in Djibouti to issue a bill of lading. That means it could be issued directly, and it goes under a single document to our partners globally, who will be able to use that same document to clear on the other side of customs and necessary documentation. Obviously, the final anticipation, and we expect this at least to start 2020, is the use of blockchain. One of the issues that we have in Ethiopia is to be able to have each concerned government entities, from banks, insurance, customs, they're not aligned. They're not all at the same document, or same information is not exchanged. Using blockchain, that could be streamlined greatly and increase the efficiency and again, effectiveness of the whole supply chain of the operation side. So these are some of the expectations that we have in the next 1 to 2 years. And again, that will be of a benefit to the manufacturer, the buyer, and us to provide a better service to you as well.
So thanks to combined capabilities in freight forwarding and operation at destination in Ethiopia, our current customers are named on this page. We can manage a focus on 2 of them: Decathlon, so French sport retail chain with a large garment assortment, And the second one will be Titantex. So Decathlon, just for information, we manage so the sourcing and of their finished goods in Ethiopia, but we have also managed within Africa the implementation of their first store outlets in Ivory Coast. They were in Morocco for 10 years, but from 2 years now, for 2 years, they have been operating, so opening outlets in Ivory Coast, in RDC, in Ghana, in South Africa, in Kenya, in Egypt, and we accompany them as well on the retail side of their business. But let's come back to the Decathlon finished goods sourcing in Ethiopia. Theodros.
So what we do for Decathlon on the import side is to consolidate their cargo. Today, they import raw materials from 3-4 different destinations in Asia. So what we've managed to do for Decathlon is be able to consolidate all their cargo in Asia and bring it under consolidated to Ethiopia. This has been a great benefit for Decathlon. Even though today the volumes are not, as you can see, they're not much, 4 to 5 containers per month.
But their target is to have 10 million pieces a year in Ethiopia.
Yes.
It's a short-term target.
So this is something that we've done for them, and at the moment we're trying to also discuss with them on the export side if we can also consolidate for them. So hopefully by mid-2019 we'll be able to do consolidation export for Decathlon.
Okay. The second example, so concern Titantex?
Titantex, it's the opposite. What we do for them is a door-to-door service, which means that in Ethiopia, our company looks after all the consolidation part. We put it together and send it out to their buyers. And on the other side in Italy, as you saw on the video earlier, in Italy, Bolloré Italy takes over and delivers it to the final warehouse. So it's just end-to-end full service that we provide for them, including the shipping, the air freight, sea freight, the whole lot. So which makes it also very interesting for us as a model that can be implemented with all our other customers that we have.
Obviously, we have operations with other brands everywhere in the world. So you have some names we are working with at the moment. And obviously, we launched conversation to assess whether or not Ethiopia is a good place for sourcing for them. And today, I come back to our objective with Theodros when coming here, is to launch conversation and workshops with some of you in order to assess in which extent the time to market offered by Ethiopia sourcing can match your expectations regarding the launch and of your collections. And obviously, there are the other advantages, the cost, especially the taxes cost and also the labor cost. But we wanted to insist, to emphasize that beside this, let's say, common rationale put forward for Ethiopia, there is this time to market, and Bolloré is an actor which can help you to streamline and to be sure that from end to end, your operation will be so streamlined.
And also, I'm sure as you see this, there's a lot of questions that come to your mind if you are a buyer or a seller. And that's why we're here, is to understand what your needs are, or if you're potential customers to Ethiopia, what you're thinking, any questions, because what logistics plays in the value chain is critical. If you can't get your goods in and out of the country, it becomes very difficult to operate. So if any questions that you may have, we're here to be able to answer those questions for you. We'll share our contacts with you, but here we can open it up maybe, Xavier, to discussions of anybody that has
and we can help to make mature this new sourcing, because now, as I told you, the China routes are completely known and the processes are completely streamlined. It's not still the case in Ethiopia, and we think that we are an actor which could help you to have the best conditions to operate in Ethiopia. Some questions at this point?
Sure.
Please. You mentioned that there are going to be more options than Djibouti. Just trying to understand more, like what other corridors and options do you expect to open up in 2019?
Good question. 2019, we're looking at, as a country, Eritrea to come into play. Eritrea has 2 ports for Ethiopia, which is one is on the southern part that comes in straight to the central Ethiopia, and then on the northern side, the port of Massawa, be able to serve Mekelle side. This is, as a trial, as we speak, the month of March, there'll be 2 vessels docking in the port of Massawa in Eritrea to be able to test access into Ethiopia. I was in Eritrea a few months ago, training government officials on cross-border trading and what kind of documentation and standardization needs to be between the 2 countries, and what our experience has been dealing with Djibouti. So this is, again, supported by both governments, including European Union and everybody else. So we are definitely looking into Eritrea coming to play 2019, definitely. So that's going to be a main one. There is, as you know, or if you've perhaps followed the news, Somalia is coming into play as well. So Mogadishu is becoming quite active. There's a port that could be used. We're not yet sure. Somaliland is open, the port of Berbera, to access eastern part of Ethiopia. But these are not our natural ports. Our natural ports today is Djibouti and then ports of Eritrea. And the distance between the Assab port and Djibouti port is exactly the same. They're both 950 kilometers from Addis. But the cost to the port is a fraction of what Djibouti is today. So that could be key, huh?
Okay, we have 2 representatives of branded apparel company. Is it possible to know what were questions when coming here? Or your interest? Well, can make it in French if you prefer.
En fait, nous, on est très intéressés pour produire en Afrique. En ce moment, on produisait au Bénin et on cherche à se renseigner pour l'Éthiopie, mais je ne sais pas si on n'a pas trop vraiment de questions. Faut qu'on...
Ok, non, mais c'est votre...
Voilà.
Okay, so for the other, this company is already operating, producing in Benin, for instance, and they are open to enlarge their geographies of sourcing.
Well, we welcome you to Ethiopia. Somebody else?
Explaining the rationale for being interested by Ethiopia?
Oh yeah, here you
go. 2 questions. Are there courier services on site at the industrial parks? Say if you want to ship samples or something really quick, how do they get there efficiently? And then another question, how many vessels on average do you know come into the port, leave the port daily or monthly in Djibouti, just to get an idea?
Thank you for the questions regarding samples, because we had these questions because, as I mentioned, I had worked for many years in the textile company, and these questions of samples, it can be a roadblock on the time to market. So at the time, please tell us.
Yeah, at the time, there is DHL is servicing, especially Awasa Industrial Park. I'm sure on the other ones also they will open up courier services. So it is available today. Yes, more competition need to go into that. And as the industry grows, remember this is just an infant, we're at the infant stage of the whole process. So to be able to get to some level, definitely.
And for your information, Bolloré is currently launching a partnership with UPS, is in a series of Africa countries, and it is likely that this courier business should be a part of the added value we could bring in the coming years. Yes. So regarding the question of the frequency for the
vessels.
The vessels.
There is, again, depending on which shipping lines you're talking about, but on an example, let's say, if you're looking at Maersk MSC, they have weekly vessels coming in, some, in fact, twice a week. Djibouti's, yeah. From Shanghai, you're looking at most likely 3-4 times a week. Yeah, 3 to 4 times a week. Djibouti port is quite busy for Ethiopia. So like I said, Djibouti handles over 350 containers a year. So it's not a small port at all. So there's a lot of vessels that come in. So this will be the challenge again when we open up new corridors as Eritrea, to bring in vessels to call those ports will be a challenge. So we need to be able to support it with enough volume to make it interesting for shipping lines.